And I spend 12 hours a night doing that 4 or 5 days a week.
I think I got the recording working now too. Looks like it.
Yes, it says.
Yeah, I can see the little flash.
Yeah, so this might actually like segue into like general sort of sheepdog stuff. I'm still digging deeper and learning about how it works, but one of the theories that I've seen when you're looking at Scrum or Agile is that it's the almost the counter opposite of how a lot of stuff was structured when we had the Industrial Revolution, because in the Industrial Revolution was a huge asset, but it also had this, it had this thing where to like some extent it's sort of like, if you're a participant, it's like you have the managerial class, and then everyone else is a human resource, and you're crushing the autonomy out of them. It's like, here's your instructions, we'll treat you like a machine, and we'll squeeze as much out of you as we can. So
yeah, it makes sense.
The new management theories now, is especially depending on the size of the company, it's going from a top-down hierarchy more to a leveled out. I mean, you're still gonna have a hierarchy. You still need your CEOs, you still need your upper management. But then now it's they found that the more autonomy you give your middle managements and your frontline managers and your value stream workers, is that you get better ideas, you get better product out. It's more of a level playing field. You got more collaboration than you have where it's just you do what I say, and you actually can use your talent that you have that you may not know that you have if you just treat them like a robot. Here's your task, do this task, do it this way.
Right, and that's exactly the stuff that I'm looking at right now. So another one of the main theories is that if you're helping people cultivate their own autonomy and helping each small team cultivate its own autonomy, they're going to be more likely to take personal responsibility, right? Instead of it just being blindly following orders.
Correct. Yeah, it's you get their buy-in for more than just a paycheck. That's going. One of the things I have to deal with as a supervisor is getting getting my value stream buy-in. Some people doesn't take much motivation. Some you have to micromanage. It's just you have to learn your personnel and put them in the best possible spots to succeed. And that's different for every individual. You just kind of got to learn everybody's quirks, and it's best for the whole organization when you're putting everybody in the best spots to succeed. I come from an economics background, though. I'll look at everything economically. So, that's the way I always try to look at production.
Cool. So do you do, in the way that you do Agile, do you do daily stand-ups or anything like that?
No, we got KPIs that we go by. We got certain performance indicators that we try to hit, and we do it by machine, and we also do it by each individual group, and then we do it by the whole plan. So, because a lot of what we do, because like I said, we have a workflow, so it goes from one spot in the company to another, then out the door. And they all have to work together to get that product out. And if you lose one link of that chain, you're not getting the product out. So what one link does greatly affects what the other link does, even though they might be in a separate building. Or they might be in a building across town where we have our distribution center, we have our bag making place. So that's kind of, how my main job is keeping the workflow and keeping people motivated and making sure the rules are being abided by. We're doing food products, so we have to go abide by a lot of food safety things. So
That makes sense. I wonder if, I mean, if you have like the latitude to experiment, it might be worth it to look into Scrum, because one of the things you do is ideally you break everything down into teams. So each team is between 3 up to a maximum of 9, but hopefully no more than actually 7. And the daily Scrum, how that works is everyone stands up and they say, they report what did they do yesterday to help their team reach their goal for this sprint. What am I going to do today to reach the goal for this sprint? And what is any obstacle for myself or the team as a whole that I notice or think might be getting in our way of the sprint goal? So if you're doing this every day for only 15 minutes, but you do it every day, so that if you see any point where the team is getting held up on, then everybody swarms around it. And because they're inspecting and adapting every day, it makes them self-organizing.
I mean, we essentially do that type thing, being that it's a production facility. We do the Kaizen studies, and we do the practice the Six Sigma and lean manufacturing, 5S, best practice type stuff anyway. And that's something that we document and keep up with on a daily basis. So but I'll definitely look into that Scrum and see if that's something that I can add to my repertoire that will benefit me in the future. I'm always willing to learn things and anything that'll help me out. So,
would you say that you're like reverse engineering the corporate model? You're decentralizing it now. You're going back to small units instead of the big behemoth, everything the same, all focused on scalability and not, agility, like you were saying before.
I think it is. I think it is pretty much along those lines. One of the things I also look at it as is one of the concepts we talk about in propertarianism and Sheepdog is sort of the less agency that someone has, the more they might rely on the structure around them. So this is sort of laying out a structure that can let people, even if they have less agency, they can still take what they have and hopefully they can be more autonomous and more productive.
I said, I think what the biggest benefit would be is that it's going to have to get everybody's buy-in. I mean, for you to be able to look at that on a daily basis, you have to buy into the process. So you can get people's buy-in that may not have bought in. You know as well as I do, if you've ever been in a collaboration, a group setting, there's those that will check out and let everybody else do the work. What you're talking about to me sounds more like you get everybody involved on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I mean, like obviously it's to the best of your ability, but this is like you just keep looking for bottlenecks and improving it more. I haven't got the chance to like practice it very much. We might be starting like a sort of test run, like first sprint in about 2 weeks, but I think it's about January 20th or so that we really kick off into the full thing. But I've been like listening to like audiobooks and reading books, and it's like it's saved, like this process has saved a lot of big products, because it's just apparently it's just so much more efficient to be working in small groups and constantly inspecting and adapting. I think it was at Toyota. It was some sort of Japanese car company that they took it from, because this place always had like a higher level of output with less errors. And one of the things is like any worker on the line can pull the ripcord or the button or whatever, and then the whole thing stops if they see a problem, and then everyone swarms around the problem, gets it fixed, and then it keeps going. So apparently they picked it up. What was that?
That sounds awesome. I still wonder how that was. I guess if you're working in smaller groups, that would work, or if you don't have such a like I said, a lot of what we do is kind of it's just a set thing that we repeat over and over again. But there is a talent to it. Not everybody can do it. And you being in the technology field, y'all definitely need that agility to be able to meet with the demands, because y'all's demands probably change. I can fathom y'all probably working on projects that just when y'all are getting towards the end, it's well, the demand's not there anymore. Here's you another project to work on. And it's just a constant rolling over that. If you're not as agile as you need to be, you're not going to be getting the products out in time. But in technology, it changes so fast.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because I'm going to obviously practice it and do some more research. But if it's as solid as it looks, it's one of those things that's funny because if it works that well, then it's going to get to a situation where if you don't use it, or if you don't use something better, you're not going to be able to compete. So I think that might be why you see all these giant corporations like Coca-Cola and like everybody trying to take this on, even though it fundamentally is like the exact opposite of what's baked into their DNA, because they're baked in like human resources. You guys are all like stupid animals, do exactly what I tell you so I can somehow extract some value, right?
I'm laughing, but there's a lot of truth in that statement. Yeah, that's that agility.
Can you hear me?
Is what's going to be
fascinating. Well, yeah, they can.
To me, it sounded a lot like a Six Sigma, though. Where Six Sigma was for quality, this is going to be for production.
I'm just looking up that term, Six Sigma.
Name Six Sigma. I mean, if anybody in production has probably heard of it. It's where you're guaranteeing a certain quality by bell curve, and you're looking at best practice to be able to keep your quality within. I think it's 3.4 parts per million get recalled if you're running it like it should be.
Yeah, I see here it says Six Sigma is a disciplined, data-driven approach and methodology for eliminating defects in any process. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Felipe.
Sorry. I was gonna say the goal of marketing is to diminish your resistance towards a sale. So the more dumber we are, and with the people who want no competition, the big capitalist families who put the public education system together, as John Taylor Gatto says. We were talking about this before with Bill. Did you get to hear, Lane? Because you came in later.
I'm not sure. What was the general point?
No, we just quickly mentioned John Taylor Gatto and the public education system. And now that you're talking about the marketing and dumb people, it just goes hand in hand how the marketing people and the elite want us dumb, to sell us stuff and to follow orders, basically. That's my point.
Yeah, this is like pretty much right out of John Taylor Gatto's research. Like what is like the scientific management, or what was that guy that came up with the human resources term?
Oh yeah, I know. What was his name?
Something Taylor.
Forgot his name.
I'll be right back.
Some big eugenics guy.
Yeah, scientific.
Was it Fitzer or something?
Oh, that's a different. That is one of the related guys. I'm looking at Frederick Winslow Taylor. Scientific management is sometimes called Taylorism after its founder.
Oh, okay. No, the term was familiar. I just don't know the names.
Fichte, one of those German philosophers that is was what laid the sort of groundwork for the public education system.
Yeah, he was some what was he? wasn't he the one that created kindergarten in Bavaria or something like that? One of the founders of the Bavarian Illuminati as well. I'm not sure.
It could well be. I recognize that name, and I like how I had that stored away in my head was one of these philosophers that, came up with public education. So it's one of those funny things where it's like a fine line, because on one hand, when they did that, did they like increase the spread of literacy and the ability to read? Probably. Were people more like useless before they had that? Could well be. But it's like overall they don't have like a very cohesive strategy, because I mean, at this point it's like a socialist indoctrination strategy, right?
Yeah, exactly. You could say that they gave us the inverted trivium, so they gave us the grammar and the rhetoric, but not the logic, so we wouldn't figure out what that they're putting us into a circle. Do you know what I mean? Like, we know how to read and write and follow instructions, but we don't know how to ask who, what, why, where, and how, and think for ourselves. So they just give us enough to do the job and to follow orders, but not so we can become a threat and a competition.
Yeah, they teach us how to follow instructions, but not how to think.
Yeah, that's me homeschooling my kids. I have to deal with that a lot. That's kind of how they were taught. It was more by memorization and then applying that memorization instead of really learning how to think and how to, get beyond just that memorization part. Memorization's good, as far as to get you started, but being able to figure out the why, and that's one of the hardest things I've had, because that's always came easy for me than having to try to teach my kids that. It's very difficult, believe it or not. And you have to be careful that you do it in a way that you're not demeaning them or letting them see your frustration, because that came so easy for me even as a kid. I was always a questioner. I always wanted to know why, and getting them to think on that lines. Public schooling doesn't, at least not down here in my area, and they went to one of the top public schools in the state.
So you're saying that you find your children are a little less inquisitive regarding why. Do you find that were they maybe more inquisitive earlier and then less inquisitive as they went further in the public education?
That's what I believe happened. I believe they of course, all kids are naturally inquisitive. They're always, the joke is they're always asking 20 questions. But I noticed as their schooling went that they were going away from that. It was more on a memorization basis. Instead of instead of learning, you're learning your times tables instead of figuring out, well, why is it like that? Why is 9 times 9 81? Not, just remembering that, your tables. And that was a hard thing to try to get them to change their way of thinking, rather than just memorize everything to pass a test, to actually learning how to think, getting into the logic part.
That's kind of disturbing to think, that they could train that out of people.
I'm curious to know what your story is, Elaine. How did you get into proprietarianism, and how long ago? And what's your story, man?
It was about maybe 2 to 3 years ago. Bill started posting some of Kurt's stuff, and I was like, at first I was like, yeah, it's a little odd, but it seems like there's something to it. And pretty quickly I wrapped my head around like a few of the basic points. I mean, the idea that law is the science of cooperation. So it's how you have a civilization, and that you can calculate retaliation spirals based on reciprocity.
Yeah.
And the truth tests, you know. So
how long have you been following Kurt and P and Bill? I think I was introduced to them like early 2016. And truthfully, you know, the first thing I started trying to do is falsify everything, because when I read over it, it spoke to me so much that these are the things that I had thought out myself, but could not put it into words the way he did. So once I got down to the basics of the grammars, you know, I started trying to falsify everything. I spent a good part of 2 years doing nothing but trying to falsify. Luckily, I was taught that as a young man, to question everything, including yourself, especially yourself. So, yeah, that's how I came into it. And actually, I didn't even put it on my profile that I was a proprietarian probably until about 6 months ago, just because I spent all this time reading and trying to falsify it.
Oh, that's great. What about you, Michelle?
I'm here. Funny story. Way back in the day, I was invited to go to this kind of shamanic ceremony thing, and they had different guest speakers, stuff like that. And there was a gentleman who hosted, who had a community for men who were, abused and things like that when they were young. So it was I don't want to say a safe space because I don't really believe in safe spaces, but he fostered and nurtured men who were broken from childhood and helped them come back to their manhood and things like that. So it was a shamanic thing. Anyways, I was looking for him on Facebook, and I found, our Kurt Doolittle instead of the shaman Kurt Doolittle. And there was totally by chance when I was reading some of Kurt's stuff, it was things that it brought me back images back to my childhood about how I understood the world and how it ought to be, so to speak. Why law is important, why the way we explain things and teach things, why it is the way it is, and let's just say I was very grateful because I spent the majority of my life meeting a few people here and there who touched on the same mindset as us, the same understanding. But the majority of the people that I knew growing up, and I've lived on 3 continents, so I've met a lot of people. I was very social when I was young. But the majority of people are not like that. They can't even fathom, you can break it down to the very basics and it just escapes them. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't be the only person that thinks like this. There has to be people out there. So, Facebook, regardless of what people say about
Exactly.
it, it's been a good thing for me. I met some really, really great people. Like some of you guys are fantastic, and just learning as I go. I'm just starting to really understand the concepts, but what they say, if you can't teach it, you don't really understand it. So I'm not gonna toot my horn or anything, because if you ask me to teach it to somebody, no, I'm not there yet. So
the more you put yourself out there, the quicker you're going to learn. So don't be afraid to make mistakes and to actually try to teach, because if you don't try, you said you've been doing it for a couple of years. Maybe once I get to 2 years like you, maybe I could try and teach 1 or 2 things. Maybe 2 years is already enough. What do you think?
Well, I think I've noticed that kind of across the board with folks of proprietarianism, that obviously you have yours who are the exception, but I think on average 2 to 3 years to kind of really grasp it and teach it. So I'm not really concerned with spreading the word. If the conversations come up somewhere, I'm sure to participate, out in the world, but I'm more focused on, I have 2 little children, 5 years and 6 months. So I'm more interested in contributing to the community that we have online. If there are movements being made in the world, I want to contribute there with what I can. Long-term focus, if we do end up it's just a matter of time before we end up getting what we want. I would probably see myself as more of, like I said, I'm going to be hitting my 40s, more of one who's been around and will help other women to understand, you know, because the thinking is like they say, a man's world. I don't want to say it's like a man's world, but it's very complex, and you have to be able to break it down. And because women are very emotional biologically, you know, they're fine-tuned to other things. I think
and on
that
average,
instead of having, you know, a man explain it to them or expect it of them, I think that if we have women of an older generation to break it down for them, leading by example of somebody who really understands it, then it goes from there. And obviously teaching my sons, you know, my 5-year-old, I put Kurt Doolittle and John Mark on YouTube. I put it on, and, you know, my son's playing with his Legos, but he's listening. It's all there in the background.
yes, it is. His subconscious is soaking it up.
That's right. So, and I'm not really one to form my children's minds in the sense of, like, I homeschool. I shouldn't even say I homeschool. I unschool. So I don't sit with my son and they can do any kind of workbook or breakdown basics. So our learning is all day long. So if I'm cooking something, if I'm baking something, you know, you want to participate, that's great. Let's measure this, let's measure that. If we go to the grocery store, you know, how much does this cost? Now we're talking about taxes and percentages. And my son's going to be 6. Like he has very proprietarian mindset, very matter of fact, this doesn't make sense. And I think his temperament naturally is collaborative to begin with. We are still fine tuning the reciprocity of things.
But he's lucky to have a mother that's giving him all these tools, lucky on. So you should feel proud. Well done.
Oh, thank you. I think it's important. I think that if the few of us that understand it and implement it into our children within a generation or two, I think that we can really turn the system around. Because as much as the war is inevitable, like most people say, I am rooting for, you know, the less resistant way, right? So how does that saying go? Sorry, I speak 3 languages, but yeah. So yeah, look for the wrong Doolittle and found the right one, so to speak. That's where I come from.
The path of least resistance.
Yes, the path of least resistance. Thank you.
Welcome.
We all hope for the peaceful, but, you know, sadly, I don't see that, especially here for us in America. I don't know, some over in Europe, you know, looking at these yellow vest type things going on. You know, I wonder how peaceful it's going to stay. Eventually, I think, you know, it might turn unpeaceful, and just being ready if that happens. You know, we all hope it doesn't.
Yeah, you know, I'm not the kind of, I don't consider myself your typical average female nowadays, in ways that I've grown quite, you know, like sensitive in the last 10 years, but I'm not afraid of violence. I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's evil. I think it's a necessity. You know, I think that in some cases, the world has gone so far that there will need to be some form of violence necessary in certain circumstances. But for me, everything is circumstantial. And I can hear my kids coming home. So if I just pop out, then I'll just wish you guys a Merry Christmas up front. Yeah, if violence is necessary to establish ourselves and get back on top, then, you know, so be it. So be it.
Oh, well, the women won't have to fight. We'll do it for you. Don't worry. Okay.
You know, the funny thing is I have very much a war mentality. If I didn't have children, I would be right there with the boys, as silly as that sounds. Because I'm,
you can,
you know, I'm not a
be a nurse.
But,
that's it.
No. You know, it's funny that you say that, because I am by trade or by profession, however you want to speak it, I'm self-employed as a death doula. So it's not too far off from what you're saying. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many children you say? You have 2.
I have 2 right now. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What's scary for me is that my 2 are of the age now. You know, my youngest is 16 and my oldest just turned 18. So when it does hit the fan, they're gonna be they're at that age where I have to teach them, beyond just, the economics and academic stuff. I've got to make sure that they're able to handle themselves.
Yeah, the biggest thing I will always tell people that have children, if you haven't put them into some kind of combat training, whatever it might be, could be wrestling, could be, young kids, I would always suggest something in the taekwondo, karate prior to anything else, even gymnastics, just to get the agility, the mindset of discipline. But I always tell people, it doesn't matter what you're doing, the top priority right now, aside from, storing food and having some kind of shelter to go to, is learn the combat. It's so important. My son, the same thing. He's doing gymnastics now because he can't stand still and listen like a typical, 5-year-old boy. He's so alpha and so wants to be out there and learn everything right now. And, it's training, right? Children are like dogs. You have to train them to hone their skills. So, but if your children aren't in combat, let them know, hey, get into it, because
they'll just end up being beta males.
Yeah, well, that's the unfortunate thing, right? We have become so lax as a culture and society, a civilization, that the majority of people, when I hear about like these so-called elite classes wanting to get rid of half of the population on the planet, I can't say I agree, but I comprehend it, because if I'm thinking about making progress, like I've always had this crazy idea, like love to travel in space. Let's go to different planets and explore and see what's out there. This is me really it's just fantasy play. It's nothing that I occupy my time with. But when you have people that are so ambitious and they are so determined and they are so dedicated and so disciplined and focused, if I have an entire planet of people who are just leeching off of the progress and off of the progress, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't want to take care of them. You have opportunities, you have the opportunity to learn and to grow and to do all these things, and you choose not to because you're lazy. That's what it comes down to. I'm not talking about disabled, elderly, but I don't know. This is a very controversial within myself, very complex dichotomy, because in one way I understand where they're coming from, but I'm not, I don't believe in murdering people just, because you don't want to deal with it. So there has to be better solutions. So
part of the beauty of P, though, is that it gives you a measure gives you a way to measure this. And, like Bill had said earlier, there's times where predatoryism and parasitism is, allowed within natural law.
mm-hmm.
But where is it beneficial? How do you limit it? How do you punish it? How do you make sure others aren't paying the cost for it? These are the things that P allows you to look at and put a measure to. That's what caught me, and that's what really got me in it, was the being able to measure things within it. So now you're looking at things on a scale, and you're able to pinpoint things, and you're able to say, Kurt's dead right when he says that a lot of this is that the cost, right now it's cheaper for us to allow you to be a parasite. There comes a point in time where we'll perceive that cost is no longer cheaper. And at that point in time, it will end, one way or the other. If you want to stave it off and make it where you end it before violence, then that's where you get reciprocity and putting P law into place. Punish it that way instead of having to do it on an individual basis, or even a group basis, making it where it comes to that violence.
It's a really good talk. I got to call it a night, though. Does anyone else want me to hand the host over to them?
No, I'm
have to go myself.
What was that?
Go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry. I said I'm okay for tonight. I'd love to continue it next week and just go from there. So thanks, Aaron.
That's all I'm saying. I'm actually, I have to go. I'll just stay on because I didn't want to leave. I left the last one early. So I was kind of waiting on somebody to call it.
I hate to cut you off there. I thought you were done the train of thought, but we'll pick it up next time, man.
Yeah. Good night, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Merry
All right,
Christmas.
take care.
Bye.
Thank you.